All right, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Elijah Talks Ball. We got some stuff to break down. DeAndre Hopkins has a new home. Cooper and Puka are back in action tonight against the Vikings. Jerod Mayo setting fires off in New England. We're going to break down whether we believe that's an overreaction in just the media being the media, or if that's actually worth its salt. And then we're going to give you 4 teams that should be buyers, 4 teams that should be sellers ahead of the trade deadline. So before we get into it, like and subscribe, comment down below. Tell me what you think of the video. Tell me what you think of the topics, whether you disagree or agree. And yeah, like I said, I'm Elijah. This is Elijah Talks Ball, so let's do it. DeAndre Hopkins traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. And man, has this trade deadline as it's approaching been exciting. You know, in past years, especially when I grew up, there were not a ton of trades that would go down in the offseason, let alone the regular season. You know, maybe every once in a while you'd have a big name go. I remember when the Patriots got Randy Moss, it was like the whole world stopped. I couldn't believe it. And that's when I was a youngin', wasn't even balls deep in the NFL like I am now. Well, now it seems like every offseason, it's a whole new season for a month. When it comes to free agency and all these trades, GMs, they're looking at teams saying, this guy isn't going to be an addition for us to move forward. Might as well get a third, get a fourth for him. That's a cheap starter. Get off some of the money so we can spend it in free agency and move forward, help that team win. And on the same side, they look at it as, are we going to get a player this good in our 4th round? Probably not. So obviously you do the trades for a win-win, but it's a win-win-win for the fans. It's exciting as hell. And now it's bleeding into the regular season. We saw Devontae go to the Jets. Then later that day, we saw Amari Cooper go to the Bills. And now we got D-Hop to Kansas City. And this is a great trade. You know, what do the Chiefs had? They got speed in Xavier Worthy. They got a decent running back, Kareem Hunt. But they're missing that physical, contested catch guy. And Patrick Mahomes is going to find a way to get the ball to these receivers. I mean, what do we know Patrick Mahomes for during the Tyreek Hill days? Fuck it. Tyreek down there somewhere. Well, shit. Deshaun Watson and Kyler Murray started that whole ethic. D-Hop down there somewhere. You know, this guy's game isn't predicated on speed or route running or elusiveness. So even though he's at the later stages of his career, this was never what his game was built on. And he's still got incredible hands. And, you know, he knows how to play the game. He's a smart dude. You don't play in 11 years in the NFL just because you're super talented. You got to be smart, too. He's taking care of his body, obviously. And now he gets a chance to go show that he's still got some left in the tank. And the Chiefs needed this one so much. They got him for a 5th-round pick that turns into a 4th-rounder. If they make the Super Bowl with him playing 60% of the snaps, you'll take that shit all day. And if you're the Titans, you just signed Calvin Ridley. You know, you got Tony Pollard in the backfield. You don't know what you're doing at quarterback between Mason Rudolph and Will Levis. You just got a new coach. This team ain't going nowhere. It didn't make any sense to have D-Hop on here. Same thing with the Browns. Same thing with the Raiders. You know, how many players are going to turn into D-Hop for a 4th or a 5th round pick? I would say you got a 3% chance. So, good trade by the Chiefs. And if you're the Titans, you get something when you would have gotten nothing. Another exciting wide receiver, not trade news, possibly trade news. We'll kind of bleed into that later in the conversation. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are back, baby. You know, I was kind of bummed out about this Vikings-Rams game tonight because the Rams are injured at every level of their team. and the Vikings have been steamrolling everybody, even though they lost to the Lions, put up a good fight. Rams, they got one win. Going into this season, they were my dark horse team. And I'll tell you what, you've seen the physicality and the effort that if this team was healthy, they'd probably be in first in this division, because this division has been a massive letdown. It goes to show you that the Seahawks, who haven't beaten anybody, are in first place. Niners, not sure what's going on there. Seems like they missed their window. Wouldn't panic yet, but things aren't looking too bright out in Santa Clara. And then the Cardinals, I mean, how many times have we mentioned that the Cardinals are your favorite theme park ride? Just up and down, up and down, up and down. And the Rams, one win, because in the first week they lost Puka. Second week they lost Cooper. As well, in the first week they lost both their tackles. And it's just been injury after injury. But this team has kept games close. And Matthew Stafford, probably top 5 toughest guy in the NFL, really has been putting the team on his back and keeping them close, but you could only do so much. This isn't basketball where you got one good guy out of 5. You're probably going to win most of the games. You need a team. And they've been banged up. For Sean McVay, getting these two guys back, man, does that do so much for your offense, but your entire team. I mean, Cooper is the guy in that locker room. And Puka, how can you not like him? A freaking stud. Actually, a couple weeks ago, one of the people in my fantasy league dropped him because we don't have an IR. And so I've been keeping an eye on it of when he's going to come back. Saw on NFL.com that they're hopeful he's going to play. Put him back on my team. I did end up having to drop Terry McLaurin, which that kind of hurts. I didn't want to, but it was between him and DJ Moore. And DJ Moore, I just got to stay with him. He tends to get more targets throughout the year. So, anyways, that was a sidetrack. This is big for the Rams. And I got to say, now I'm hyped up for the game tonight. My girlfriend's mom is in town. It's her birthday. They want to go out to birthday dinner. I got homework to do, baby. I'm excited about this game. I was still going to stay home and watch it, but now I have even a better excuse because Cooper and Puka and Stafford with Kyron Williams. I mean, this is a game now. This could have been a snoozer, but now that the effort that the Rams have been playing with, because you knew they weren't going to come in and lay down. But now you got your fucking offense back. Let's go, baby. Speaking of Cooper Kupp, Rams are shopping him. A couple teams have been linked. Steelers, Chargers. They want a second round for him. That's a pretty high price to pay considering Devontae and Amari went for third rounders and D-Hop for a fifth. Cooper, who at his peak was a top 3 receiver, no doubt. And the first week of the year looked like he was possibly back to that form. Thing is, 31 years old and is always injured. Now, I can understand why you would want a second rounder, and that would be your asking price. They're not in a rush to get rid of him. They don't need his salary off the books. He's a pillar in what they built there in Los Angeles. You know, it's like if you had a house on the beach for $1 million that you could afford. It wasn't bogging you down, but you did want to sell it just to free up a little bit of space in your life. But everybody was asking you $750, and we'll buy it right now. It's like, well, no, I'm not going to get rid of it for something I think it's worth less. And that's kind of what it seems like the Rams are doing. Not in any rush. And I don't blame them. If you get a second, you take it. You know, unless you believe that you can just revamp this thing within the next year and give it one more run, which I think they thought that would be this year. It's just, if you're going to go back all in, shouldn't you want Cooper? So, obviously, I believe it's Les Snead who is their GM. I mean, he's a stud. They've done a great job drafting and executing trades to acquire talent and then get rid of it to kind of rebuild their team. Because it's all fun and games when you trade Cooper for a second, but you got to hit on that second round pick. And same with all these teams that are moving on from Devontae, Amari, D-Hop. You got to hit on these picks. It's the same thing with the Raiders if they trade Max Crosby for 2-1s to Detroit. It's like, oh yeah, those 2-1s are great, but I mean, there's a small chance you're not going to get a player as good as Max Crosby. I mean, you would need at least those 2 first-round picks to equal either a great quarterback or 2 players that are equally as good as Max Crosby to make it worth it. So, keep an eye out for that. Steelers are linked to it. That could be kind of fun. If Russell Wilson continues to be the quarterback, he likes to dish it underneath. They got George Pickens for the rainbow balls. Freiermuth in the middle. That opens it up for Najee Harris and, of course, Jaylen Warren. But I can't see the Chargers, who people have talked about it. They got Ladd McConkey. He's like a young Cooper Kupp. You know, a team like the Patriots, let's see what you got with your young talent. You're not going to give up a second-round pick when you're going to really need it for your rebuild. So don't expect some of these teams, you know, maybe the Commanders. I can see a team like that making the move. That would actually kind of brought that one out of nowhere. That would be pretty solid, I'm not going to lie. So keep an eye on all of it. Even a team like the Broncos, they need another guy. Bo Nix, great underneath. Bring in Cooper Kupp. So keep an eye on that, obviously, and then I'm sure we're going to hear other big trades because, like I said, the NFL is just different now. These GMs are younger, and they're ultra aggressive, and they're willing to part with late-round picks saying, well, we're not going to get a guy like that in the late rounds. I mean, maybe a 2% chance. So fuck it. Let's do it. And I love it. I'm here for it. I got 4 sell teams, 4 buy teams. We'll do the sell first. Explain why, move on to the buy, explain why, and then we'll move on to the Pats fucking opera, Phantom of the Opera BS that's going on. So obviously, we got 3 obvious ones, and then we got one kind of surprise one for the sell. We're just going to name them all off and talk about them. Patriots, Panthers, Browns, no surprise those 3, but my 4th one, kind of a surprise, the Chargers. Obviously, the Patriots, Panthers, and Browns, they suck. And it hurts to say that for the Pats, but these teams ain't going nowhere this year. Drake May looks like he's going to be a stud. Well, move on some of your older guys. Maybe, KJ Osborne. I would like to keep Jonathan Jones, but, he's in a he's in a deal year. Josh Uche only signed a year. Doesn't seem like he's going to be part of your long-term plans. Just move off some of these guys. Panthers, you got guys like Adam Thielen, Deontay Johnson, J.C. Horn. Are they going to be around for the rebuild? I mean, you'd like to lean yes with J.C. Horn. Pretty good corner, but I mean, if he hits the market, there's no way he's coming back to you because he would have signed an extension. So you could probably get a 2nd or 3rd out of him. Deontay, you probably get a 4th. Adam, a 5th. Just start stockpiling some stuff for your team. The Browns, the main one for the Browns, I got to say, I wouldn't sell everything. But you already moved on from Amari. If you're in the rebuild, why not trade Myles Garrett? And I know that sounds crazy, but you could definitely get 2 1s for him, and then probably a 2 and a 3. Maybe a 1 and a 2 this year, a 1 and a 3 next year. That's 4 high-round picks to help reset your franchise, which is going to be going through hell the next 2 years with $75 million cap hits from Deshaun Watson, who knows, might not ever play football again. You got to think about it. Because what good is he doing you for the next 2 years? I mean, if you're going to be rolling out Deshaun Watson or DTR and fucking Bailey Zappi, is this team going to be expected to go to the playoffs? Then you're just paying him for no reason, where at least you only have 2 more years of Deshaun Watson contract, so you build your young team, get rid of him, you guys get 2 years of experience with your young players, and then you can fucking hit the ground running once that cap frees up. You have to entertain it. You got to take the calls. If you're the Lions, I'm calling you. I've got the team that can afford to give up some of that capital because you've done such a good job throughout all rounds of your draft that you could live without 2 first-round picks. No doubt. And you got everybody paid. So, Max Crosby, same scenario. You have to entertain it. I'm actually more for the Raiders keeping Crosby than I am for the Browns keeping Garrett. Crosby is a Raider. You can just tell it. But, what's Myles Garrett doing there? Same with Denzel Ward. I mean, it's tough. Do you want to strip your team down? But where are you going? Nowhere. Last one, Chargers, like I said. This might be a little surprising because you got Justin Herbert. You got some pieces on defense with Derwin James and Khalil Mack, but this team, you can tell, even though they're going to be good in the future because they got the quarterback, they've got the pieces on offensive line. They got a couple young receivers. Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnson, they're coming along. Ladd McConkey looks like he's going to be decent. But Joey Bosa, to me, is your number one trade candidate. He's always hurt. You got Tuli Tuipulotu. I don't know how you say that, but you get what I'm saying. He looks like he's going to be a pretty good player. He's shown flashes over the past couple years. Edge rusher, he plays a lot because Joey Bosa seemingly always injured. And Khalil Mack, old enough to call my grandpa. Doesn't make any sense for those guys to stick around. I'd keep Derwin James. He's still young enough that he's going to be part of your plans, but why not move on from those guys? A team like the Ravens, you trade Bosa or Mack, or maybe you package them both, see if you can get a third rounder or second rounder for both of them. I don't know if the Ravens could afford that, but it's something to talk about. And that would set you guys up. Jim Harbaugh has done a great job of developing talent over the years. You get a couple extra draft picks to kind of mini reset yourself. You get rid of the big contracts with Mack and Bosa, and you free up a little bit of room to kind of go out, maybe get an Ashton Genty, run the ball. You've got the wall, draft the rest defense, maybe a tight end in there as well. Maybe get Colston Loveland from Michigan in the second round. Jim Harbaugh's former player at Michigan, and you kind of accelerate things at a quicker rate. So those are my 4 teams. There's obviously more, but those are my 4 main ones that I would look. If you're the GM, you got to start selling. And if you're another GM, you got to call them. Moving on to the buyers. We have the Lions, the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Baltimore Ravens. Looking through the top teams, there's the Packers, there's the Vikings, there's the Texans, you could call the Falcons a top team, but they're not in the league of the 3 I just mentioned, but incredibly young. Doesn't make sense for them to part with some of the draft capital as they're still, it seems like, 1 season away. That's how I would put it. Maybe next year you go all in on a guy. Now, I think the Packers and Texans easily capable of winning the Super Bowl this year. But let some of those younger guys continue to develop, and maybe in the offseason, somebody comes available. The 4 teams I picked, and the reason why is Lions, Aiden Hutchinson down. That hurts. We've talked about it. Max Crosby, Myles Garrett. Those are the 2 guys I'm calling for. Lions are in the best shape, if you ask me, out of any team in the NFL to part with their draft capital. They fucking nailed it. The past 3 drafts between Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, drafting guys in every round and developing them into starters. The one spot they're the weakest is the secondary, but you draft Harrion on Arnold, cornerback out of Alabama. You have Ennis Rakeshaw Jr. out of Missouri, both rookies. You sign Carlton Davis. You have Carl Joseph. So you have some younger pieces that probably will develop as the year goes, but that Aiden Hutchinson injury hurts. So why not part with 2-1s, bring in Myles Garrett or Max Crosby, and then you got it for the future because you've got Sewell under contract. You got Amon-Ra under contract. You got Goff under contract. You got Montgomery under contract. You still have 3 years of control before you even have to get into contract talks with Jahmyr Gibbs. Jameson Williams, he's not going to be up for a contract for another 2 years. He's got more to prove. So Jack Campbell, your linebacker, and Alex Anzalone, these aren't high-priced guys. So you can afford, with the young talent on your roster, to kind of move on from some of those picks, bring in an established star that'll be there for your entire Super Bowl run. It's not like you're drafting, it's not like you're trading for a guy who's on a 1-year contract. These guys are going to be here for 2-3 years. Aiden will come back. You guys will be a force. You also have Alan McNeil in the middle. Be a fucking insane defensive line. So, Lions number 1. Bills, we saw it. They're trading for Amari Cooper. The biggest thing for me with this is how many years of peak Josh Allen do we have left? We saw with Big Ben, and we saw with Cam Newton. They were dominant in their prime. I mean, you couldn't sack them. You couldn't tackle them. You couldn't even push them out of bounds. Whatever they wanted to do, they got done on the football field. But when it went, and by went, I mean their shoulder, their fucking body from taking all the beating that they did, it went hard. They dropped off a cliff. We saw Cam Newton with the 2020 Patriots downhill fast. And we obviously saw Big Ben in his final year couldn't throw the ball past the fucking line of scrimmage, it seemed like. So, are we concerned about that with Josh Allen? It's not as physical of an arrow, but these guys, listen, even though they can't just run full speed with their helmet down into the quarterback's chest and slam them to the ground, these guys are still big, strong, and fast. And Josh Allen does not slide and does not go out of bounds. He puts his shoulder down and he inflicts pain. But I guarantee you, he's also had pain inflicted because he's not the only 6'6", 240-pound guy in the NFL. There's a lot of beefcakes. He's 28. You got to think at least 2 more years peak. But then maybe 2 more years good, and then you got to start having a conversation. And I feel like that's being generous. So you bring in Amari Cooper. Now your offense, pretty solid. James Cook, Ray Davis at running back. Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, tight end. Now you got Cooper, Shakir, Keon Coleman at wide receiver, plus Curtis Samuel. Do you go defense? Because that's been the issue. You're going to get Matt Milano back. Terrell Bernard came back. Von Miller, off and on. Ed Oliver. You could use some pieces on defense in the secondary, especially your safety position, incredibly weak after moving on from Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. Damar Hamlin, he's just not cutting it right now. He's kind of like your nickel guy, typical equation. He's like your 6th man in basketball. Do you want him out there all the time? No, but he's a good substitute. I would even say 7th man. Shout out Damar Hamlin. Great job coming back to the NFL. Don't mean to roast you. Just got to talk ball here. So I say you got to go all in if you're the Bills. See who can get. You know, this would be a team for J.C. Horn, like we talked about with the Panthers. Can you get J.C. Horn for a 4th? That would be tough if you're asking me, but if you can, you do it. You kidding me? Because you're going to have to face the Bills with Devontae and Garrett Wilson, and you're going to have to face the Jets with Jalen and Tyreek, and I think the division is the least of your worries, but you're going to have to go through the Bengals, and now you got a physical corner in J.C. Horn to go up against D-Hop and the Chiefs. So, Bills, bye. Bengals and Ravens. The Ravens, obviously, to me, right now, are the best team in the NFL. With how Lamar Jackson is playing, nobody can stop them. Derrick Henry's almost at 1,000 yards already. He's the best bargain of the offseason, by the way. The offensive line has figured their shit out. Lamar, I think it's in 84 starts, he has 5 games with 5 touchdowns passes and 0 interceptions. Everybody else has like 300 starts to get to that mark or something. It's pretty wild. Or maybe 200 starts. 300 sounds like a lot, but I saw a figure today. He's like a third of it. It's incredible. Eventually, we're going to have to just fast forward through the regular season when it comes to Lamar. I got to see you do it in the postseason. That's all that really matters now. This could be the year. Your defense will come along. You got too many guys on this team. But it wouldn't be a bad idea to add another guy on that side of the ball or maybe on the offensive line because you could use a little help. Maybe you talk to the Jags. They got, Brandon Sheriff, Walker Little, Cam Robinson. They got 3 guys on that offensive line that you could argue you could move on from because, they're 2-5. Maybe you got to wait 2 more weeks for that to happen. Because as you know, NFL moved the trade deadline a week after Halloween. I believe it's on the same as Election Day. So that's going to be a crazy day. But the Ravens, they're my Super Bowl favorite. I know that the Chiefs are undefeated, but the Ravens have been stomping everybody without playing good defense. So just imagine when they do figure it out. Because they got a new defensive coordinator this year. But they still got all the pieces, minus Patrick Queen. But you drafted Nate Wiggins. He's coming along. Things sometimes take a little bit to get figured out. So the Ravens right now, buy. Go all in. Maybe don't give up a first or second round pick, but supplement the weaker spots on your roster with average starters to just kind of give you that extra spice, like a little bit of cayenne in your dish. And Bengals, finally, you guys are at a crossroads. You've paid Joe Burrow. You're going to have to pay Jamar. You're going to have to pay T. Higgins. You let Jesse Bates walk. You brought Von Mel back. This team has a bunch of holes, and you started off slow. But if you don't believe T. Higgins is going to come back and you're not going to pay Jamar Chase, yeah, you would need your draft capital, but you'd have to go in all in this year. And if you got off to a faster start, this would be an easier choice. So this is kind of a decision for me where it's hit or miss. It depends on how the next couple weeks go. If you win both of your games, all in. If you lose, just trade T. Higgins. Just get it over with. Get something for him and move forward. Finally, we got to talk about Jerod Mayo. And I do not have the typical take that most of these talking heads in the fucking media do. I'm sick and tired of it. Jerod came out and said, we're a soft football team right now after the game, which they were. They got ground and pounded, couldn't stop the run, couldn't defend the run, and gave up a 100-yard punt return. It's fucking embarrassing, and he called them a soft football team. Then he also clarified to the team and the media, I didn't mean we're a soft football team. I meant we're playing soft. And that is acceptable because it's the truth. And now everybody's blown it out of proportion like we're 3 years in to this guy's coaching career. And he's got a loaded team like when Tomlin took over the Steelers. It's like, no, this team, we knew it was only going to have 3 or 4 wins. We're in week 7 and we're 1-6. What'd you expect was going to happen? Build the culture that you want. If you got guys that are going to get their feelings hurt over being called soft, get the fuck out of my building. And maybe that's what Jerod's doing. Now, I heard that the practices are soft. I'm not in the locker room. I don't know for sure. If I'm Jerod Mayo, I'm putting on the pads, and we're doing Oklahomas. I don't give a fuck if I get fined. We're building the culture. And maybe that's what we need. But we're only 7 weeks in. We're 2 weeks into Drake May's fucking career. Can we relax? He looks like he's going to be good. Van Pelt, still figuring it out. DeMarcus Covington, still figuring it out. Bill Belichick, saying that they had the #1 run defense last year. It's like, yeah, well, you also had Matt Judon, Christian Barmore, Jawan Bentley, Peppers. All those guys are out right now or off the team. So we're dealing with a ton of injuries in a bunch of guys' first year as coaching. Dante Hightower, the linebackers coach, first year coaching. So let's give it at least the rest of the year. Take a deep breath. See how the team performs and builds. It's all new faces. I mean, you don't eat a sauce after you put all the ingredients in the pan within 30 seconds. You got to put that bitch on low and let it simmer. And that's when it becomes delightful and delicious. So maybe we got to let this simmer for a little bit and let them cook. No pun intended. So, guys, that is the video. By the way, Rams win tonight. That's my prediction, guys. Stay safe. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the World Series. That's tomorrow. Peace out.